We had airports closing, we had airlines cancelling flights, reinstating flights. We had clients who didn't want to come home. They said, well, we're on holiday, we're in a lovely place, there's no problem, we're going to stay here. But we had to start taking the line that we don't know if we'll be able to get you home if you don't come now.
Hello, I'm Steph McGovern. Welcome to another episode of Let's Make the New Now, brought to you by Royal Bank of Scotland. Now, in this episode, we're going to talk about the tough conversations that business owners have had to have this year, because let's face it, COVID-19 has meant many SMEs have had to make really difficult decisions. So we're going to chat to two business people who have faced these problems head on. So with me, Hutans Ahmadi, who is Director of Shoe Restoration Service, Shoe Lab, and the founder of Experience Travel Group, Sam Clark. Sam, let me start with you.
Hey, Steph.
Do you know, I can't even begin to imagine the drama you have faced as someone in the travel industry this year. So, first up, how are you?
Well, I'm still here, so that's got to be counted as a good thing from where I'm sitting.
Yeah, definitely. So just tell me a bit more about your business then and where you operate.
So Experience Travel Group, we're a travel company, but we specialise in Asia, and it's not kind of holidays where you just go and sit on a beach for 2 weeks, although there's usually a beach element. And it's not about sort of ticking off the main sites. It's about really, getting under the skin of the country, really smelling the smells and tasting the tales, meeting people, doing what we call revealing the fabric of the destination.
Yeah, and then before the pandemic hit, how was business?
It was good. I mean, in travel, you often get situations when suddenly we heard the FCO, had been scaling up and getting worse and worse and worse through February. We were getting very, very affected by it. And then through March, and you realise something's coming down the line at you. And then I think it was the 20th of March or something, when the FCO advised against all travel to every destination. And as a travel company, you're like, well, what do we do? Where do we go from there? It's just a completely unprecedented situation.
Yeah. So I guess that meant pretty much overnight for you having to make some tough decisions.
It did. So, I mean, we were navigating working from home like everyone else in the country. We started planning for that early March. But at the same time as that was going on, we had to try and get all of our customers home from where they were. And we had airports closing, we had airlines cancelling flights, reinstating flights. We had clients who didn't want to come home. They said, well, we're on holiday, we're in a lovely place, there's no problem, we're going to stay here. But we had to start taking the line that we don't know if we'll be able to get you home if you don't come now. And I think in retrospect, we were right to take that, because people got stuck for months in country. And at the same time as all that, we've got a lot of people booked on holidays in April, particularly over the Easter holidays. And we had to tell them all that they weren't going to be able to go. Also, at the same time, trying to persuade them to postpone as opposed to cancel. That's obviously in our favour in business sense, because we at least, we don't get the revenue now, but we might get it down the track. But also, all of our suppliers who are often small hotels or guides and freelancers all over Asia. So at least they can get an idea that at one point they will get paid, they will get some of the business.
The thing, when you explain all that, Sam, it just really makes you realise all the different stakeholders you've got, and everyone having different needs and different explanation and information they need. So how did you manage all those different conversations?
Yeah, that's quite an astute question. We do. You've got three basic kind of stakeholders that you've got to manage. There's the suppliers on one hand, that's all your partners in country, and of course, and airlines and things like that. And there was a big credit crunch because people refused to let go of money. So you had to manage that side of things. Everyone, cash was king in that situation. And then you've got the customers, obviously, and the customers need to be looked after. That's our first priority. They need to be looked after in country. That's our sort of primary responsibility. And also the people about to travel, we've got to service their needs. They paid for a service, and we need to supply that. But also, of course, our employees. The employees, they were in an unprecedented situation, just like everyone else. They were worried about their job. They were worried about their career. They're seeing that travel's coming to a standstill, and yet they've got to deal every day with clients, with suppliers, etc. So to manage all of that three is quite a balance.
So how did you do it?
I think I'm lucky insofar as we've got a really strong team, and they're quite used to dealing with difficult situations for the clients. And I guess the job of all of us in Experience Travel Group, or ETG as we call it, is to really understand people and to empathise with where they're coming from, what they want from their holiday primarily, and how we can make that kind of happen together, how we can make that sort of magic of travel. Now, in this situation, you need to go back to basics and really understand where your customers are coming from. You can't fall back on trying to play the sympathy card, because you need to understand that they're looking forward to a holiday and they're in a difficult situation, and you've got to understand where they come from. And I think with our employees, it's just a matter of being really, really clear and not trying to be overly optimistic or even overly pessimistic, but just very, very clear-eyed about what the situation is and what we need of them.
It's really interesting, because I'm interested to know how you kind of manage to motivate your staff to have difficult conversations with customers and suppliers at the same time as worrying about their own jobs. So how did you keep the morale in your staff?
Well, we did a daily round table Zoom thing. So every day we got everyone on the screen, and everyone went round and just said, one thing about how they were feeling, and one good thing about what happened today, and one thing they found difficult. And that was it. When we were right in the eye of the storm, we found that really, really invaluable. I think it would have been, it'd be too much if I suggested we're going to do it every day for the rest of the time. But when we were in the eye of that storm, it was really, really useful. It was useful for me as well as all the team, because we were able to connect and just understand that everyone was finding it very, very difficult.
And so do you think then, Sam, from the things that you brought in to help you during clearly a period of crisis, are there learnings that will stay in the business now in terms of, how you talk to your staff or how you deal with customers or suppliers?
Yeah, get out of travel and not get back into it. But no, there definitely are. I think we've learned massively that, or relearned the lesson really, because I guess it was a lesson we knew already, but you can't communicate enough. You've just got to keep communicating, and that goes with all three sides of the triangle, as we talked about earlier: the suppliers, the customers, and employees, and really just making sure everyone's in the loop, making sure everyone knows what the situation is, being honest about the situation and talking, and that was so clear. And I think our customers really responded well. Our customers were fantastically supportive for us, so many postponing their trip to help us out, really. And I think because we were honest and we communicated a lot, they were really open to that. So that's definitely the most important lesson.
Yeah. And I think that's key for lots of businesses, whatever industry you're in. It's still a sector which is constantly got change in it and uncertainty. The travel rules are kind of changing on a weekly, sometimes daily basis at the moment. So what are your thoughts on the future for your industry? How are you feeling about things?
It is still really, really difficult. There is no confidence in the market. They're just too worried to book trips because, am I going to be quarantined? Am I allowed in? What's going to happen? A lot of our destinations in Asia at the moment are saying, look, we don't want UK visitors, full stop. So it's very open-ended. It's not like there's going to be a time we know when when demand is going to come back. And I think we have to be realistic about that we're also facing a pretty heavy recession. So the market is going to come back eventually, but it will come back smaller than it was in 2019, and we have to be really realistic about that at the moment.
So let's flip this on its head and talk about the positives, Sam. So what are the things you're kind of looking at and thinking, this is going to be good for the industry, we've learned things that'll be good, or any kind of positives from all of it? Yeah,
definitely. I listened to someone speak, on one of these online seminars that everyone's doing recently, and they said, we really need to focus on the travel industry on being smarter and smaller, because it is likely to be a smaller market, and if we're smarter we can take advantage of the opportunities, and that really resonated with me. So there's a couple of things that we're doing, and one is, firstly, the key problem at the moment is confidence in the market. What we want to do is talk about travel. We want to book travel. We want to start planning. We also want our suppliers, our contacts out there in Asia, to be able to feel that business is going to come back at some day. So what we've tried to do is come up with a solution where we can de-risk the booking and planning process. So if you were keen to book a holiday or think about a holiday next year, we'll say, look, come and do that. We'll plan it with you. We'll go through all the normal planning. And what you can do is just pay £100 deposit. So you're not risking anything. And even that is refundable if the trip wasn't to go ahead. But you can still do that planning. And that has a really positive effect on not just our employees, but also our suppliers in country. And it makes it that bit more likely we'll get the business once travel is ready again. So that's the first thing we're doing. The second thing is we've looked at our market and thought that, people have had a hard time, right, so the last 6 months, and, people have, struggled, and it's been very difficult. And we think that travel is one of the ways that you can work your way through that. You can, I don't want to say, get better, but you can really start, enjoying yourself again. And so we've looked at a new product which we're calling Revitalize, which is a much simpler holiday than we do normally. It's probably just 1 or 2 stops, but it's still in places that are really unique to that country or that place. They're still really immersive. You still feel like you're in the destination, really in the destination, but they'll be much more simple and a bit more of a focus on kind of well-being and health. So we're looking at that as a product to launch as confidence comes back to the market.
Yeah. So then, based on all of that and what you've learned from everything you've been through, what would your advice be to other travel companies?
If I had any advice, it is that we do need to be aware that it is going to be a smaller sector. I think we need to learn in terms of sustainability. I think there were elements that we've seen improved through lockdown. So things like over-tourism, things like too many people visiting one place at one time. And I think we need to come back smarter. We need to learn from things like that and really improve from a sustainability perspective. And I think we've got an amazing opportunity to do so. Yeah.
So what do you think other sectors could learn from your sector?
I think other sectors could learn about planning, could learn in terms of the expectation of a shock to happen, because we are living in a more and more uncertain world. So the only kind of certainty is that there will be more shocks to the system. There will be more problems. We don't know what they are. It's Donald Rumsfeld's known unknowns. We know there's going to be something happening. And I think the travel sector is very, very good at preparing for that and making sure that they're ready for that. And I think there's a very high level of looking after clients, which is not always appreciated, I think, in the market. Travel has to look after clients from a regulatory perspective, financial perspective, and just a people perspective in a very, very high level way.
Yeah, I think that's really fascinating. Thank you so much, Sam. Lovely to talk to you.
But it's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Well, from shattered travel plans, we're now going to talk about an inventive shoe company. Shoe Lab is a digital and postal-based company which brings old and untidy shoes, I have many of them, back to life through their thorough restoration service. And Hutan Ahmadi is a company director at Shoe Lab. Hello, Hutan.
Hi, Steph.
Tell me a bit about how Shoe Lab came about then.
So a few years back, one of the current directors, who's pretty shoe obsessed, started it with a friend of his, just doing local pickups, cleaning shoes for almost a bit of pocket money. And the business kind of grew organically. And I got to know about it a year ago. A mutual friend of ours said that the guys were looking to make the business a little bit more kind of official, get a little bit more structure around it and grow it. And myself and my wife sent off 10, 15 pairs of shoes and they came back spotless. So we were sold. And that's how really I got involved. It was through that, really.
I love the way you tested it first. So can you just explain then, how does it work for customers?
So basically, you go on the website. There's 4 options: men's shoes, women's shoes, kids and boots. You pick the option, you print off, you pay for the service, you print off the label, put your shoes in a bag or a box, take it to a local DPD point and send it off. And a week later, it comes back brand spanking new.
So clearly relying on the postal service, and I imagine it must have been tricky in the height of lockdown, relying on the postal service.
Well, it was tricky to start with because we weren't doing a purely postal service before the lockdown. It was still a lot reliant on local pickups, and we were actually trying to change the business into a countrywide kind of postal pickup service through the DPD points. And obviously with the lockdown, you can't have any interaction with anyone, so that side of the business kind of died down. It was a blessing in disguise. We started to develop that kind of drop-off service, and even then a lot of the DPD points are local businesses, and they had obviously closed with everything. So really the business almost came to a halt in kind of the height of the lockdown, and it was quite difficult during that time. Yeah.
So you must have had tough conversations then. Tell us about them.
Yeah, I mean, you got to imagine the business really, although it's been running for a few years, it was running under a different brand, and it's been running for around a year or so. So the guys that kind of started the business were really, really obviously upset. We just started to build a bit of momentum, and it was really difficult for them. I think ultimately they understood, and we understood that things that you can control, and things you can't. You just have to adapt. So we took that time. We all had a meeting, and we all took that time to see what positives we can get out of it and how we can come out the other side stronger than we were beforehand. But certainly speaking to people that are so passionate about the business and telling them that it's going to come to a halt and not knowing if it's going to, if it's going to pick up where you left off, furloughing staff, it really wasn't easy. And I think everyone would agree it's much easier doing this on a face-to-face basis. Usually you'd meet up, you'd explain to people, but doing it over Zoom and phone calls is not ideal. And that, I think, was what we found the hardest part of it, really.
Yeah, and so tell me a bit more about that, about, when you're talking to staff that you're furloughing, and as you say, you can't meet up with them, what did you do to make sure that they were all right?
I think the one thing we did is we made sure we had everyone on the line kind of, similar time. It's not a huge company, so we were able to control it somewhat through Zoom. And it was really, before speaking to people, coming up with ideas and plans as to how we were going to come out of this stronger than when we went into it. I think if people know that they're going to take and have a little bit of time off, but they're going to come back and their jobs are secure, I think that was really important to make sure that they knew we weren't making cuts nilly-willy. We were going to invest in the company. We promised to do that initially and grow the company. And I think when people know that potentially they're going to come back to something better and bigger, and they're going to be part of something that's going to be positive going forward, I think that makes a big difference. But it's not easy, I have to say.
Yeah, and how did they take it when you were having these conversations?
Do you know what? Because everyone kind of involved is at a virgin stage in the business. They're really understanding, because they know that we want to grow the business going forward. I think perhaps if there were employees that'd been in the job for 10 years and it was just a job that they go to on a daily basis, I think perhaps they would have found it harder. But these are guys that are part of the company. We come to them for ideas. We come to them for feedback. They are essential and integral part of it. So it was really actually a joint decision. It wasn't just us saying, listen, you're going to get furloughed, or you're not going to do this, or you're going to do that. We actually discussed it, and that was kind of a mutual agreement between everyone.
Hutan, what's your thoughts then and your tips on just not getting into that situation where you're having to have these tough conversations? So like trying to not even get anywhere near to having to get rid of staff or anything else like that.
Well, I think with this whole lockdown thing, it was a real sucker punch. It's not something that anyone could have predicted. Then it came around and it's hit every single business. And I think the important things is to take lessons away from that. I think to have cash flow reserves for people's salaries, especially over a certain period of time. To look at your P&L and really make sure that you have a comfort buffer of, X number of months before you have to start looking at making cuts going forward. And we've certainly now built that into the P&L, whereas we perhaps may not have before the lockdown, to make sure that, good people to work with are not easy, to come by. And we've got really, really good, passionate people that work with us. And the last thing you want to do is to mess them around. And really, we want to try and keep the staff, for as long as possible and on the same contracts, etc. So I think that's the biggest thing for me.
And then what about on the customer side? How did you deal with the kind of communication with customers through all of this?
So we're lucky because obviously it's mainly digital. So we're really able to communicate with the customers quite easily. We actually use the time to build up our marketing, to use some influencer marketing, to change the digital strategy. So that for us has been actually a little bit of a blessing because, as I said before, the business was reliant on drop-offs and pick-up points locally. And during this time, we've really managed to pin down a more countrywide service. And that's helped us. I think us being more of an online service now really helped with the communication with our customers.
Yeah, and what about things now? How are they? Have you, you've made the new normal. So what's it like now being in it?
Yeah, it's not too bad, to be honest. We've started to bring people back from furlough. The business has started again. We're almost above where we left off, which is great in terms of kind of orders and sales. And it's really sad to say, but in a climate perhaps when things are harder, businesses like us thrive more because people are less likely to go and spend maybe on a new pair of shoes, whereas they want their old ones brought back to life. So we're actually seeing an upsurge in business, whereas others might be suffering. So we're quite optimistic over the next year or so.
What can people who are watching, listening to this take away from what you've learned?
I think from my point of view, what I've always tried to do is I've tried to be light and profit maximizing. So I try not to look at businesses or get involved in businesses who have small margins because I always think they're affected by things really quickly. I try to get involved with businesses which are not so much affected by governmental decisions, so they're pretty stable. And to start light, I think if you're starting a business, if you can run it from home in the short term, do so. Don't pay for an office. If you can cut this, maximize your profits, understand your clients, understand what you're doing. And once you have a business that's going forward and thriving, yes, get investment, throw money at it, and try and grow. I think the biggest thing that I've learned, and I've been through a few businesses that haven't worked as well up until now, is really going head first, not understanding my demographic and always thinking of the most positive case. Whereas really, when you go into something, I would advise people to look at the most positive case. You've always got to be positive, but think, okay, well, look, if this doesn't hit the target, if this doesn't happen, what then happens? Because, when we start businesses, usually we start it off alone or with a friend or a colleague, but soon it becomes something bigger and we're reliant on other people in terms of, salary, staffing, etc. And I think you've got to take all those things into consideration to make sure that whatever you're going to has an outcome and succeeds, really.
Yeah, and you've briefly mentioned the future for Shoe Lab, but what about across the board in business? Like, what is it you think are going to be the businesses that do well? Like, what attributes do you think they're going to have?
Well, I think it's the ones that can adapt really quickly. I think you've already seen a lot of people started working from home, a lot of people using technology a lot more. I think it's people that, are going more digital. The ones that are able to adapt to changes, I think the ones that will ultimately survive. I think, there have been businesses that have been running for many, many, many years. And I think you really just have to be able to adapt to what gets thrown at you. And I think we're going to go more into the ilk of, working from home, having meetings, being able to motivate people to work from home. Often it's difficult to do that. I think those are the things that people need to really take on board going forward.
Yeah, Hutan, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Do make sure you join us for the next episode of Let's Make the New Now, where we'll be looking at companies who've managed to find a gap in the market in 2020, which allowed SMEs to find opportunities to exploit them. That's what we'll be talking about. See you then. Bye-bye.